Hello, welcome everyone to this show, Pioneering Perspectives. And it's a show to really highlight the unique, pioneering, out of the box perspectives that are not in the mainstream. It's also a show to really highlight perspectives by Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color who don't often get a voice in the mainstream. And yeah, and we've had a diversity of topics from sexual integration to anger to like anger from African spirituality, and it's always been these out of the box, non-mainstream pioneering ideas. And today I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Sailesh Rao. I met him about 3 years ago at a mutual friend's place where he was speaking, and he was talking about veganism, but also like many different topics. And that's another thing that I like about him is that he's basically a dot connector, connecting the dots among different subjects. And I'm a dot connector too. And he's also trained as a systems engineer, which means he's trained to really see systems, and how they all interconnect, which I love. And what really struck me about that talk was him talking about humanity's big leap from 1995 to 2005, and 2005 to 2015, and then we have another big leap. Although I think this time it's both a leap and a crossroads, because we could go the other way too. So we can talk about that. And as I was reading the book, the other thing that really struck me, he wrote the book Carbon Yoga, as well as Carbon Dharma, which was the first book. He talks about a new kind of currency called AhimsaCoin. And I myself have documented 9 different types of currencies. And so that's why that really, like, my ears perked up or my eyes opened up when I read the book, that section of the book, because it's been an interest of mine for a long time. But he expressed it in such a unique way that I just love. And it was really eye-opening. I'll just read these 2 sentences from the book. In our current system, we issue currency for debt, but never issue currency for interest on the debt, with the result that borrowers have to compete with each other to acquire the currency for paying back the interest on the debts. And that was just amazing. And I was talking about this to a friend of mine. He basically added that means bankruptcy is actually built into the system, which is also totally crazy. And then the next sentence is amazing too. Alternatively, the economy has to continuously grow in order to grease the flow of currency back to the lenders who truly occupy the top positions on the totem pole, which would be a natural result of the first thing. And then his official bio, of course, is that he is, from being a systems engineer, he went into environment and climate change and all of that. So now he is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers, a nonprofit dedicated towards healing the Earth's climate, system specialist with a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University, conferred in 1986. Sailesh worked on the internet communications infrastructure for 20 years after graduation. In fact, reading the book, he also was one of the people responsible for the kind of internet we have today. It would have been a centralized internet if it wasn't for the work of Dr. Sailesh Rao. Now we have the distributed, decentralized, peer-to-peer Ethernet, because he helped the Ethernet become 10 times faster when originally it was much slower than the centralized internet. In 2006, he switched careers and became deeply immersed full-time in the spiritual and environmental crises affecting humanity. He's the author of the 2011 book, Carbon Dharma, The Occupation of Butterflies, and also the latest book, Carbon Yoga, The Vegan Metamorphosis. He's also one of the producers for the trilogy of films, Cowspiracy, What the Health, and The Human Experiment, right? All right, welcome, Dr. Sailesh.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kundan.
Yeah, so where do we want to dive into first? There's so many different angles to get into this topic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually begin with this analogy and a story, right? So imagine that uh, Michelangelo has just finished carving David.
Mm.
And at the end of that, he invites everyone to come and unveil. He's going to unveil this David. And they show up in Florence at the square where he's been working. And then they start yelling at him for all the mess. Look at all the marble pieces that are on the floor. I mean, when are you going to clean this up? And so that is the kind of response that we are doing to ourselves as a species, right? We've actually done something amazing, but we are only focusing on the messes we have created, as opposed to telling the story of the amazing thing that we have done and how we can utilize that to, yeah, we have messes to clean up, but we have a different purpose now, right? So this is the story of the transformation that I'm trying to tell. You know, like they say that it's actually a saying by Tracy Martin. She says that change is inevitable, but transformation is intentional. Right? And this is why I see the vegan movement as the forefront of this transformation. We are going from a system of normalized violence to a system of normalized non-violence, where we say we can, coexist with all other species without having to be a top predator or a savage predator. Instead, we can become a caretaker species. So this is the transformation that's happening now. And this is why I say this is from 2015 to 2025. This is the transformation that's happening. Us assuming our true role as the caretaker species of the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, and right, and I mentioned it's a crossroads also because I was reading in your book there's a section where you said, and it was almost startling and alarming too, but at the same time. By the way, it's a fine balance, right? And that's why the right story running it is important. And when I was advertising this show with you, I mentioned that you're one of the few people I've met in whose presence I felt both the urgency but also the hope, right? Because you really walk that fine line and you're very good at it. And I mentioned this because I was also reading in your book that from 1970 to 2010, in that 40-year period, half the wildlife vertebrates have disappeared.
Right.
It's crazy insane. And that it's exponential, which means that by 2026, it's possible that all of them will disappear. So we literally have only 7 years left, right?
Right.
If we don't do something. And at the same time, you're saying that this is because it is the caterpillar phase, right? Which is similar to your story about Michelangelo. It's a similar analogy where the caterpillar, just overconsumes and eats, and, it's just bloated. And we think, oh, that's really bad. How is the caterpillar going to become anything else? But then there's these imaginal cells which are creating the new butterfly, right? And then it becomes this totally unexpected creature. And the vegan movement is one of those imaginal cells. And of course, there are other social justice movements, like, fighting against sexism, racism, all of those movements are also these cells. So,
right.
Yeah. Tell us more about how to really, treat that fine line so that we don't go into hopeless, powerless despair, right? But also we don't go into this naivety of, oh, everything's perfect, nothing needs to change,
Right.
which is actually one of the four storylines, right? You mentioned.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the four storylines.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can say everything is a mess
Right.
and everything needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't inspire people, even though that's true, because
Mm-hmm.
you're only focusing on the mess,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you can say everything is a mess and nothing needs to change because this is the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's just blindly going forward and killing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just silly. Or you can say everything is perfect, but nothing needs to change, which is the kind of story we would tell if we think we are sitting on top of this perch and we are the ones who are going to survive, right? If everyone else dies off.
Mm-hmm.
But the storyline I tell in my book is that everything is perfect, but everything needs to change. So it is the story of transformation. But it also, you have to be realistic about the urgency of this transformation, right? So because it is true, we are at a crossroads, and we are always given a choice. So see, I come from a Hindu perspective. I was raised as a Hindu, and we have the Bhagavad Gita, which informs us, and then the Bhagavad Gita, which is really a dialogue between man and God. At the end of that Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, God tells Arjuna, man, I have given you everything, but I love you so much that I set you free even from me, and you're free to choose. And of course, at that point, Arjuna is choosing whatever God wants, right? Because he has done a great job of counseling him.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in a very similar situation. We have been, we now see, we have been given the knowledge, we have been given the tools or the technologies to understand the story of the thermostat species, the story of this metamorphosis, and the urgency of this metamorphosis. We have been given that story. We have been given the knowledge to understand that. But now we are also being given the choice. Do you want to metamorphosize or do you not want to do it? It's up to you. So, but I say to people, I've seen these exponential transformations happen in my life twice already. The internet was one. In 1995, people told me that the internet is going nowhere, that no one is going to be, buying things on the internet or reading stuff off the internet. It's a pipe dream. It's never going to happen. And at that time, the internet was not very robust. I had trouble even getting 100 megabit per second working in the backbone. And so that's where I was asked to look at it as a systems engineer and to understand how can we make it more robust. And in 1996, January, I went to the meeting. I remember this distinctly because it was right after the biggest snowstorm that I've ever experienced in my life. I almost got snowed under, so I couldn't even get on a plane and go to my meeting. I was stuck in my office overnight. I remember, they had to dig a tunnel through the snow to my office door and free me first so that I could go catch my plane. And I remember walking out from my office with two huge walls of snow on either side of me. They were double my size, it's like really huge. And I walked out and I, went to the meeting and I told people that I can actually, on that cable, I can do a gigabit and make it robust. Instead of 100, we can do 1,000 and make it really robust. And it will be extremely robust. And everybody laughed at me. They said, you're having trouble getting 100 to work. You're talking about doing 1,000, right? So that was, at that point, it was, unthinkable for people that it could happen. But in 3 years, it became a standard. and we had products out by 2003. We were selling 150 million units a year, and the internet was taking off because it created a really robust backbone for the internet. So the users had a very good experience. Instead of seeing hourglasses on your screen, you actually clicked on something and it showed up. And so the internet became something that everyone wanted at that point. And in 2005, I overheard someone say, "I don't think I can live without the internet." So that's how much it had taken over our lives in just 10 years. So the other story I tell is, in 2005, a colleague of mine told me that gay marriage will never happen, because it was unthinkable. How can men get married to men, women get married to women? This is so far out that it will never happen. And in 2015, it was normal, right? It was just, you cannot imagine going back now. It's that normal. And in 2015, I was presenting a paper at the AGU meeting in San Francisco, which showed that if the whole world goes vegan today, you will release so much land back to nature that you can literally reverse climate change if you just bring back the forests that were there on that land in 1800. Because we will release 1/3 of the land area of the planet back to nature. And on that, only 41% of that land used to be forests in 1800. But if those forests came back, you can store more carbon than we've added to the atmosphere since 1750. And we can literally reverse climate change. Okay. So this was the result we were presenting at the AGU meeting. And hundreds of climate scientists came by and they told me that, you're right, because it's undisputable, because it's just replacing grasslands with forests and adding up the numbers. Anybody can do that in their models and see that what I am saying is true. But they said it's true, but it'll never happen, right? Because it's impossible for people to give up their meat. And I'm seeing the same phenomenon, the vegan movement grow exponentially over time. And if you extrapolate the exponential curve at which the vegan movement is growing, you see that by 2025, we're going to cover almost 100% of the earth. Everyone will be vegan, right? So it will become normal, in my opinion. It will become normal by 2025. So that's the exponential movement I see, exponential transformation that I see happening.
Do you see that just in the United States or globally?
Globally, it's really a global movement. Everywhere in the world that I go to, people are just inspired by this idea that you can actually live without hurting animals, and you can actually live and simultaneously take care of the animals. The only relationship you have with animals is a relationship of kindness and love, not death and cruelty, which is what we have today. Right? So people are inspired by that thought because it is very much in alignment with who they really are. Because we all have compassion in our hearts. If you go ask a child, would you deliberately hurt an animal? You'll never find a child saying, yes, I would do that. We are sort of conditioned into it as we grow up. So this is who we really are in our hearts. We are fundamentally compassionate beings. So going vegan is about coming home to who we really are. It's really about returning home. And this is why it's inspiring for people that you could live like that. You can actually organize ourselves as a society, as a species, without having to hurt animals. And in fact, with taking care of animals as our primary responsibility. Right? And so that's why I think the vegan movement is unstoppable.
Do you think that going back to the imaginal cell idea
Mhm.
and how some people have to be vegans first before others. This idea of some people become imaginal cells first, right?
Mhm.
I say that because I feel like the way we have the system that we have today, do you think everyone is ready to become vegan all at once at the same time, or does each person have their own timeline? And as eventually there'll be sort of a tipping point, and then there needs to be other like systemic changes in the system itself for like more and more people to be ready, as far as like the way like their bodies are, for example, because there are because there's also like a lot of like unhealthy vegans who are just eating cheese and a lot of cashews and fats,
Right.
and you can be an unhealthy vegan too, depending on how you eat, if you're not ready to like see it as the entire system of your life. I've actually written an article called Lifestyle Over Diet, where I talk about, how it's not just about food, you also need to change like your sleeping patterns, what you do
Right.
before you sleep, what time you wake up. You need at least 30 minutes of sunlight per day. And also I do like intermittent fasting. I only eat about 8 to 10 hours a day, and then 14 to
Mhm.
16 hours I fast. So, and that's because of that digestion rate of food. So fruits like take 3 hours to digest. Vegetables take 6 hours, and then
Mhm.
grains and lentils take 18 hours, and then meat, of course, take 20 to 30 hours to digest. And we keep putting more and more of this, and it just rots in our stomach, and then spreads throughout all this rotten stuff spreads throughout the body. But anyways, I think there's always, of course, arguments against veganism from non-vegans. And I think the two biggest ones I see is, oh, my body just needs meat. I'm not ready, right? And then the second is,
Mhm.
what about the in nature, lions, kill the goat and then they eat the goat, and then the cat kills the mouse and eats the mouse. So like they're
Right.
saying like it's natural, right? I don't
Mhm.
think what we're doing on the scale that we're doing, factory farming, no animal does that. So that's not natural for sure. But what would you say, like, first of all, to this argument about, what if we just go back into hunter-gatherers and we just hunt animals? Would that would you be okay with that, or still that's still not right? Like,
Right. So, if we look at just the numbers, the fact is human population is now 7.6 billion,
mhm,
and at about 68 kgs per person on
mhm,
average. Our total weight now is more than double the weight of all the wild animals that lived 10,000 years ago,
mhm,
just our species alone.
mhm,
So if we now start acting like predators, there
mhm,
are no wild animals left for us to eat. Okay, this is
mhm,
why we have to factory farm our animals.
mhm,
And the factory farmed animals are now eating 5 times as much food as we eat. So they are a
mhm,
huge burden on the planet. And
mhm,
this is why the wild animals are dying at such an
mhm,
exponential pace. So we killed 60% of wild animals between 10,000 years ago and 1970.
mhm.
And then we killed another 52% from 1970 to 2010.
Wow.
And then it became 58% by 2012. So we are killing an additional 3% per year. That's the rate at which it's exponentially growing. This is why I
Wow.
say by 2026, we are on track to wipe them out.
Mhm,
So even if you kept them at the current population, they are still almost 90% in lion right now and survive, right? Because there aren't too many animals to eat. So this is why, for us to eat, and they do that, they can produce the food that we are demanding from them. So this is why the vegan movement is absolutely essential to
Mm.
do it. So it is not something that you need to force on people. The force is coming from nature. It's not us forcing our fellow human beings.
Mm.
Nature. So when you see like a huge flood happen in Nebraska, you get people from Nebraska, calling me saying, "Hey, can you tell me something more about agroforestry? Maybe we should be doing something different from raising animals for food," which is what we were doing. And so I can tell them, yeah, if you go back to agroforestry, if you return the prairies that were there and you start growing wild rice and some of the things that used to happen in Nebraska before human beings took over,
Yeah.
you can actually create something more sustainable that you don't have to, do what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think not only animal agriculture, but even plant agriculture, the way we're doing it is not sustainable. In fact, I was reading an article about how there's this scientist who has a plan for developing a forest that has 500 fruits and vegetables growing in it, in the forest. And it turns out indigenous cultures have been doing that all over the world anyways.
Exactly,
Like
yes.
they,
Right.
they don't do the whole like cutting down trees and growing like these grains and rice and all that.
Right.
Only
Right.
we do that, the modern humans.
Right. Yeah, I mean, most of it is agroforest,
Mm-hmm.
indigenous cultures.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our forests, we are allowing nature to figure out the right mix. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is a complete system change, though.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than a top-down system where someone is directing us what to do, because that's only by doing what they want will you get your money, right? Otherwise, you're going to starve or be homeless, and so you have to obey
Mm-hmm.
and follow instructions from whoever has the money. Instead, it'll be much more independent. Everyone is independently contributing. Everyone is independently finding their niche as to how they contribute for the good of the whole,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's that kind of system that we need to build, a much more decentralized system. That's exactly what we tried to do in the internet, until it got taken over by large corporations like Facebook and Google. That's what we were trying to do with the protocols.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting you mentioned this 10-year period because, what we saw with the internet, I think we're now seeing with money and currency with, Nakamoto writing down his 2008 manifesto about the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency.
Right.
And where for the first time, no one could even like imagine before that there could be a decentralized currency system,
Right.
just as we have with the internet.
Right.
And yeah, and let's go into that. Oh, before we do that, I want to talk about. So you're saying, because as a vegan myself, like sometimes, and sometimes also I also have clients too, um, that come to me for health-related reasons, and sometimes I hesitate to just, especially with my friends, because like, oh, we should just be vegan, right? And because there's still that like resistance, and part of me is like, what if they're not ready yet,
Mhm.
right? Like, so like, how do you like approach that in your daily life?
I tell people, look, it's a journey that we are all on.
Mhm.
We are all on this journey and coming home to who we really are.
Mhm.
Because no one that I've spoken to has ever said that they would deliberately hurt an innocent animal unnecessarily,
Mhm.
which means in their heart, they're already vegan.
Mhm.
All of us are vegan in our hearts. But in our minds or in society, we are conditioned to automatically do something to animals that we would not normally do, right? Indirectly, we pay someone else to hurt the animal for us. Okay, when we consume an animal product.
Mhm.
It's about coming home to who we really are, and we each have our own path to get there, you know. And the best I can do is when you ask for help to help you out on your own.
Mhm. Maybe you froze a little bit. Let me see what happens if I stop the video. Then come back. All right. Okay, you froze completely, huh? Uh, what happened here now? Okay. All right. So yeah, that's a great point. So just accept that everybody's heads on their journey, but then if they really need help, then they do need to make all of these changes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all interconnected, and that's really what I want to get at. Because in this book, you actually approach this from many different angles, and even currency is related to all this.
Right.
Because, let me read a section from this book where you were talking about, everything is systemic, right? The climate change, biodiversity, toxic pollution, desertification, and also inequality, poverty, slavery, sexism, racism, homophobia, casteism,
Right.
ableism. And then you said here that freedom is infinitely sustainable, slavery is not, equality is infinitely sustainable, inequality is not, peace is
Right.
infinitely sustainable, war is not, justice is infinitely sustainable, injustice is not, and then happiness is infinitely sustainable, misery is not, compassion for all creation is infinitely sustainable, and then violence towards any part of creation is not. And it's true, like we have created a completely unjust, unequal system, not only towards animals, but towards each other. And the same attitude that we have towards animals, we're bringing to each other. And
Right.
therefore, we're destroying the planet, but we're also destroying each other. We have, I think, half, at least in the United States, we have half this country on some sort of antidepressants or some sort of illegal drugs, right? And the higher up you go, you see more of that, this among the CEOs, the celebrities, all of them. And it all comes down to as a root mechanism, not a root cause, but a root mechanism that is enabling all of this is the way our currency system is set up, right?
Right.
What you mentioned about printing money for debt, but not for interest is a big one. And then the other thing, according to my own research, is that it is a monopoly. It's a monocurrency system, which means there's only, for each country, there's only one currency, so everyone is fighting for the same thing.
Right.
And therefore, at the very least, having a complementary local currency is a huge step towards change, because now we have an additional resource. Like, for example, in Baltimore, there is the Baltimore dollar that's meant to be used only in the city of Baltimore. We have it in Bali too, where in Indonesia, where the Balinese have their own currency in addition to the Indonesian currency. So Brazil did an experiment with that when they designed the city of Curitiba. Curitiba had its own currency as well. So that's one approach, and I've documented, 9 different types of alternative currency systems, like time banks. Time banking is another one. And then, of course, now we have crypto as well, which is a whole other level of this, right?
Right.
And it's based on the blockchain, which is almost like cryptocurrency has similar qualities to gold even. It's like it's fungible, it's all of these things. And then you brought up the AhimsaCoin, which is tying it to the way we use the Earth's resources, right? Which I thought is brilliant as far as a form of cryptocurrency, because I've noticed that as far as investing in cryptocurrency, as a person who wants to make the world a better place, I try to invest it on values, right? Like, what is it trying to accomplish, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, tell us more about the AhimsaCoin and how it ties into both veganism and all the different social justice movements that are happening in the world.
Right. So the idea behind AhimsaCoin is the technologies that we have developed today so far there are quite a few toxicities built into the technologies. Right. It's not that if everything that we have done so far are completely non-toxic and in the environment, then we really don't need any currency whatsoever. Developing all this new technology that is non-toxic. So this is why it is important that we don't exceed a limit. Let's say a limit of, say, half the Earth. Okay. So the idea behind AhimsaCoin is to assign a cost to every product that is proportional to its ecological footprint, and then use the AhimsaCoin as a way to account.
Hello, you still there? All right.
So to account for our ecological footprint on the planet, but some of the things, tree and you're giving away fruits from your garden, that's not something you need to account for, right? Because it's already built in. So you don't need a currency for such transactions. But let's say you're buying an iPhone, right? You know that there is an ecological footprint to this device, until we develop technology that is all non-toxic, we have to account for its footprint. So I used to work for Intel, and at Intel we had this rule that if you don't account for and test for something in your chip, in your circuit, you can be pretty sure it's broken. You have to assume it's broken, right? And see if you can still survive with it being broken. And so we have been flying blind as a species. We're not accounting for any of our ecological footprint, and we're just happily using more than what the planet can really support. And this is why animals are dying, and all these wild animals are dying, and the forests are disappearing, and so on. So the idea behind AhimsaCoin is to measure our ecological footprint, and then to distribute that equitably to everyone, so that everyone has some ecological footprint allowed to them. So it's like your basic income, universal basic income you are given, right? And that comes to you automatically. So rather than currency being trickling down from the top, it's basically generated by every person because they are the source of wealth on the planet. And so the idea is to give people a mindset of abundance as opposed to a mindset of scarcity, which is what we have today. And then and instill in them the sense of generosity that will come when you have abundance. So you then start doing things for the good of others. So you can even have a mechanism whereby the currency comes into your account automatically, but it is only validated or it's usable for you for buying an iPhone, some service for a certified compassionate organization, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be validated and you get to use it. You can either use it at that point for your purposes, or you can donate it to the organization that did the certification for you. So this way, you enable these certified compassionate organizations to be the validators of currency, as opposed to banks today. Because to me, banks today are certified non-compassionate organizations. They're the exact opposite, right? Because they're strictly about money. And they will basically take away your home, even though they know you need it more than they do, right? Because that's how business is run today. So instead, it has to be certified compassionate organizations that are helping you validate your currency, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's, in a way, it's doing the opposite of what we are doing today, right? So I have this list of 7 things that will need to change as you do the metamorphosis. And you go from, say, carnism and speciesism to veganism. When you go from death and cruelty for animals to love and kindness for animals. When you go from diseases and divisions for humanity to health and unity for humanity. When you go from destruction of the planet to regeneration of the planet, right? And from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, from a culture of consumption to a culture of compassion, and from a money-driven economy to a service-driven economy. So to me, these are the 7 major shifts that will happen. That has to happen. And then once we to be in that new economy, in the new way of living, in a new way of doing things, you have to build an app for that. And once people start using that app, they will get trained in that mindset and they will want to be there, right? And then you are you are in the right position to dismantle the old, or rather the old will just shed itself as fewer and fewer people want to stick with the old, right? So you're birthing the new in that sense.
So it's basically literally the new currency of this movement, because as long as currency is in the hands of those in power right now who are non-compassionate, all the power is going to be with them, because right now money is power, right? And so we need to change that, transform that, and reverse that power back to the marginal selves and create a currency for us. That's basically what it is. And because it's not only banks that are non-compassionate, it's even corporations that produce all of these products. You've heard of planned obsolescence, right? Where products are designed to break within 2 or 3 years so that you're buying it. And so again, they don't care about us and having a valuable product that would last a lifetime. They don't care about the planet, because if you keep producing, you're going to need more resources. They only care about profit again, right? With that, and
Right.
whereas like I have like a Cutco knife, which has lasted me like almost 10 years now, you know,
Right.
and normally knives don't last that long, So,
Right.
uh, and related to that, UBI, this concept of UBI, you mentioned universal basic income or guaranteed basic income. It's been talked about even by Martin Luther King Jr. Back in the day. It's
Right.
been talked about. Even Richard Nixon wanted to do a UBI, surprisingly, back in the day, because it's something that both progressives and conservatives can agree on. Because from the conservative perspective, they want smaller government, right? They want less
Mhm.
bureaucracy, and UBI can do that. And, and I think UBI is also important because robots and AI will replace our jobs, because most of our jobs are repetitive, and a lot of software has these repetitive loops. So we're literally in the crosshairs of software, right? And it's partly also because we don't value
Right.
something that needs to be produced only once, like a poem, for example. A poem does not repeat itself, right? You produce it once. Whereas we value, strangely enough, things that are repetitive and simultaneously destroying the planet. It's a very weird priority. And so I love this idea of starting from the ground up, giving just people money, an equal
Mhm.
playing field, and then tying it to the ecological footprint. It's almost like the next step to Andrew Yang, his
Right.
proposal for basic income. He's doing it. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Also, this is a system that's very distributed. So
Mm-hmm.
because the currency is being distributed through people,
Mm-hmm.
through individuals, and then transactions are happening between individuals and certified compassionate organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And so literally it doesn't have to be on the same blockchain. It
Mm-hmm.
can be on multiple blockchains. So this is why I think
Oh, wow.
holochain is a much more natural um, platform in which to build this kind of system, because holochain, every node in holochain has its own blockchain, so to speak.
Oh my
and
God.
it and it creates and it basically doesn't use lots and lots of energy to verify the chain, because it basically does it by randomly selecting a few nodes and asking them to having um, you know people compete,
Mm-hmm.
or nodes compete. Yeah, it's HoloChain, HOLOCHAIN.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great technology. It's just, they had an Indiegogo campaign. They had an ICO that was successful last year. And so they're just making the boxes now. And it's basically like blockchain, but it also has a distributed storage. So it's like blockchain and BitTorrent put together. And I think it's the perfect platform for what we're trying to do with the AhimsaCoin.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Right. And so this also, because it has encryption built in from the outset, where in every app in HoloChain, you can choose what is private data and what is public data. So it's an agent-centric computation model as opposed to a data-centric computation model. So all the apps are working on your data. So the data is common to you as an entity within HoloChain.
Mm-hmm.
And all your apps can access any part of your data,
Mm-hmm.
and you can choose what is private and what is public. And because of that, it it becomes a collect it's a place where your intelligence is being collected. Okay, it can actually start doing automatic things for you because it knows you, right? It can then start doing things like, I'll vote for you, things like that. So you can make this, so you can have collective intelligence in the decision making processes in these apps automatically show up in the app itself, right? So it's built into the structure of the network. So it will also free us from having centralized, say, gatekeepers like Google and Facebook, who are really centralized gatekeepers, who are then basically giving you what they think you need so that they can sell you ads.
Yeah.
Because they're basically giving you whatever their advertisers want them to promote to them, to the users.
Yeah.
So instead, it's you who's in charge. So it'll be a non-advertisement based model where it's actually not a push model where the producers are pushing products on you. It's more of a pull model. You'll be building a society based on the pull model, where you look at all the needs of people and then you say, I'm going to satisfy your need, whatever your needs are, right? So it's the other way around. Someone says, "Oh, I have all these plastic bottles in my backyard that showed up, on the beach, and I need two people to come and help me clean up." And so people will show up to clean up because there's a lot of mess we have created that we need to clean up. And right now we have no way of monetizing that, so to speak, right? So no one is doing it because there's no money in it. Whereas in the new economy, where it's a service-oriented and not a money-driven economy, that's the kind of work that people will be wanting to do automatically, right? But someone else will say, hey, I want to build iPhones for you. And I want to build them with non-toxic processes. So they're going to be doing research to figure out non-toxic ways of building these technological gadgets and making them last for a long time, as opposed to designing things that you have to throw away as soon as the battery runs out, right? Which is what they're doing today. Because currently the corporations have their primary motivation is to sell you more and more products. The push economy.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas in the other side, when you do it the other way, it will be giving you products that last a long time, that minimize the resources that are used, so that it uses the least number of Ahimsa coins. Because that's based on an ecological footprint, which is a measure that is on an annual basis. How much of the Earth's capacity did you use? Right. So it's a completely different way of thinking. It's a different way of educating people. So even education system will have to change, because currently we are all still in the same British colonial education system, which was designed to produce bureaucratic administrators for the empire. And we are still producing bureaucratic administrators for the empire, but the empire is now the corporate empire. It's an empire built out of corporations. Instead, we need to be training our high school graduates to be climate healers who understand the ecology that they live in. They understand the Earth's biogeochemical cycles, who understand how to fit in as a species, as a caretaker species of the planet. Okay, so that's what we'll be training our high school graduates to be, right? As climate healers and not as bureaucratic administrators of the empire. It's a completely different education curriculum as well. So, but we need to build all this infrastructure for the new system before the butterfly is ready to be born. But as more and more people become imaginal selves, they can start contributing to this, creating the new, to birthing the new.
Yeah, that's amazing. And along those lines, I have my own idea about creating a sort of super app. They have super apps in China where everything is under one app, right? Like Uber and well, which because it's China, it has some negative consequences. Because now like they have corporations have information about everything about you. But
Right.
on the flip side, it can also be used for good if we can combine it with a cryptocurrency similar to the AhimsaCoin, where you could pay for say an Uber with an AhimsaCoin,
Mm-hmm.
and I've thought about creating a currency where, because we're going to need new creative solutions for the world, where in addition to a regular cryptocurrency, like you have the option to pay and get paid via an act of creativity, where creativity itself becomes a currency as well, sort of like a
Mm-hmm.
cross between currency and barter and trade, where you could say pay for an Uber ride with a poem or a drawing or an article that you wrote, or solving a specific problem that this driver has, and you can on the spot come up with a solution, and that can be your payment. You know, and I still have to hash the details out, but that's another thing that I've thought about myself, which uh, which now that I've learned about the AhimsaCoin and the HoloChain, that's really exciting. And maybe a few months from now, maybe sometime later, we can even like just talk privately about that too. We can, yeah,
Right. I would love that.
yeah,
Ultimately,
yeah,
it's a gifting economy, right? It's a
right,
gift economy
exactly,
you're creating.
yeah,
And so the Uber driver or Uber person is basically, or the equivalent of the Uber at that point,
mm-hmm,
would be doing it because they love to take people places, right? That's what they love to do. They want to talk to people.
mm-hmm,
So they're doing it because they want to, because everyone is getting their own basic income. They really don't have to
exactly,
do anything.
exactly,
So they do it because they want to do it, right?
exactly,
And the
yeah,
same way, you are doing the poem because you want to do it. You want to, because that's your gift that you're going to give people,
mm-hmm,
right?
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
the kind of economy that we should be in, where
mm-hmm,
everyone is this is the vitality code of nature.
mm-hmm,
Nature, every life form receives all that it needs, gives all that it can, and becomes all that it can, all that it is, right? So receive all that you need, give all that you can, become all that you are. So that's the vitality code of nature.
mm-hmm,
That's something that we will have to consciously adopt and create a system that facilitates that to happen for each one of us.
mm-hmm, yeah, exactly. So I guess just one last question before we get on Facebook Live. Uh, yeah, and thank you so much for being here. I'm thinking in terms of stories and how cultural stories are running us as well. Like you and I, we're both Hindu, right? We grew up Hindu, and it's interesting when it comes to the cow, for example.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of Hindus are vegetarian, but there's also a lot of Hindus who are not. But the common thing is like none of us eat beef, right? Because we see the cow as sacred. But somehow simultaneously we like to drink milk, also because we see the cow as sacred and we see it as God's gift to us through the cow's gift. And but reading your the story in the book about how milk is actually produced, like separating the cow from the calf, and the calf is just like bleating, in distress. It's still cruel. So how do we change our cultural story like that, like especially as Hindus?
Right.
Like,
See, I think in our case,
mm-hmm,
we're told things that were true 5,000 years ago.
mm-hmm,
So we're told that milk is nectar,
yeah,
milk is ahimsa,
mm-hmm,
it's not cruel, and milk is a sustainable part of an ecosystem where we are using the where the male cows and the bulls are helping us plow the field, and the mother cows are producing babies and giving us the excess milk for us to consume. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, all this was true 5,000 years ago. Milk was an essential part of our diet because we were only eating the local foods that were available to us. So the
Mhm.
cow was basically collecting all the rest and eating it up and giving us those essential, nutrients that we didn't get from just the fruits and vegetables that are local to us, right?
Mhm.
And milk was ahimsa. We were taking very good care of the cow. We were letting the calf drink the milk, and we were taking only the excess milk for our as a supplement for our
Mhm.
diet.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, milk was part of a sustainable ecosystem where the bull was plowing the field and so on. 5,000 years later, it is exactly the opposite. Milk is poison, not nectar. Because milk is where all the toxins we are pouring into the environment gets accumulated and is given to us. So
Mhm.
when we drink that, we are taking in all the toxins that the cow ate. And she concentrated it because these toxins are all lipophilic. They stick to fat cells. And so this is why they are coming to us in the milk that we drink,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So milk is poison. Milk is pure himsa. It is the cruelest food that you can possibly eat today. Because if we did it the old way, which we only take the excess milk after the calf has finished, the population of cows would have proliferated beyond what it is today. Okay. Right now we have 1.4 billion cows on the planet. If we all decided to drink only the excess milk after the calf has finished, we probably need 6 to 7 billion cows on the planet just to give us the same amount of milk. So
Wow.
we had to be cruel to the cow to
Mhm.
reduce our footprint on the planet.
Yeah.
We are taking it, the, the baby calf is being destroyed, it's being killed. Okay? Especially the male being killed for 4 to 5 years, and then she's hamburgers, okay,
Mhm.
in her fifth or sixth year. So, because that's the situation we are in on the planet.
Mhm.
And thirdly, it's completely unsustainable. So I say what used to be true is no longer true. And it's our job. In fact, this is one of the stories of the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, Dronacharya was the teacher who taught both the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And he fought for the evil side, the Kauravas. He was fighting on behalf of the Kauravas. And you ask, why is he fighting on behalf of the Kauravas if he's a teacher of both the Pandavas and the Kauravas? It's because Dronacharya represents habits and customs and traditions.
Mhm.
That's what he's teaching. Okay. So the moral of the story is that if you follow your habits and customs and traditions blindly, you're going to be fighting for the evil side.
Mhm.
So we have to think afresh. Every generation has a responsibility to renew the customs and the traditions. And so in this generation, it's crystal clear to me that we have to give up milk.
Mhm.
There's no question in my mind.
Yeah.
So this is, to me, I'm following Hindu dharma by giving up milk. I'm actually doing what the Mahabharata is saying. I'm actually following Krishna's advice by giving up milk.
Mhm.
Because he did say that, right? He did say, I mean, everything in the Mahabharata, all stories are symbolic. They have a deep symbolic meaning. Milk really represents the fluid mind,
Mhm.
to which you add the thought of God, thought of Krishna, which is the curd, and that then you let it sit for a while, it curdles, and then you churn that, you get butter. And so the butter is the solid mind that is fixed on God, that has no more
Mhm.
doubts about God. And this is why Krishna loves butter,
Mhm.
because your mind is fixed on God, you have faith in God. And then you take that butter and you clarify it, you get ghee. So this is the clarified solid mind fixed on God. And which is why we use ghee to light our lamps with meaning to our rituals. And so I'd rather retain those meanings and not just blindly follow our rituals. So we also have another, we have pujas that we do in temples, where we offer leaf, and we offer a fruit, and we offer a flower to God. So that represents our body, our mind, and our soul. So the mind is the flower that smells good, which is thinking of God, and the fruit, typically a banana, is a soul because the banana has no seed in it. So that represents a soul that has no beginning or no end. There is no real seed. So we're offering our body, mind, and soul to God, and then we take a coconut and we break it. Right? And that coconut is our ego. Coconut water, and what is left is the coconut fruit, which is that fruit, and you clarify it, it becomes coconut oil, which is now the clarified solid mind fixed on God. So if you use coconut oil instead of ghee, you have the same symbolism in our pujas, right? So I recommend to people use coconut oil so we can veganize all our rituals. So you really don't need to exploit a cow, for your rituals. So coconut oil represents enlightenment. So, and coconut water represents the fluid mind. So wherever we're using milk, we can use coconut water instead. So if you're, pouring milk on top of Shiva, the statue of Shiva, that really is about a fluid mind, because Shiva represents the disciplined mind. Okay, he's the God who helps you with meditation. And so this is why we pour milk on top of Shiva's statues, because we want him to purify our mind, our fluid mind that has doubts about God. Right? So instead, we can pour coconut water. It's the same ritual, and we can teach our children, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And so that we all understand why we are doing our rituals, and we begin to appreciate what they really mean. Okay, so it's about rewriting our, our rituals and redoing our rituals, veganizing them, and we also have to rewrite all of our epics to be non-violent, because right now our epics are very violent because it's based in a war setting, right? Ramayana is about a war, and Mahabharata is about a war, and so even Iliad and the Odyssey are about wars. So epics of the Western culture are also about wars. So we have to rewrite all those epics because they all have a lot of moralism and symbolism built in. We have to rewrite them to be non-violent now for the new era, because I cannot read my epics to my granddaughter. She stops me right away. In the first story itself, she says, "Why is Dasharatha killing a deer? Who told him it's okay to kill a deer?" And I had no answer to that. Because he had normalized the violence in our epics.
Your granddaughter's vegan, right?
Yeah, she's raised a vegan. So this is why she looks at things from this fresh set of eyes, and she's helping me see through the violence that I already have imbibed in me.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sailesh. This has been a truly eye-opening, insightful call full of wisdom and and connecting the dots among different subjects like we covered so much. Thank you for being on the show, Pioneering Perspectives.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kundan. It's been a pleasure talking to you.